Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started on time, which means now. For those of you I don't know, which are many of you, which is exciting, my name is Bethany Hartley. I serve as the Chief Strategy Officer for the Southbound Elkhart Regional Partnership. We're an economic development organization for the Southbound Elkhart region, which includes Berrien and Cass in Michigan, and Elkhart, Marshall, and St. Joe counties in Indiana. And our whole purpose is to catalyze economic growth across the region through an inclusive lens. And so we are excited because we know that connectedness is critical to not only a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem, but also to our whole region. Feeling connected is vitally important to be a part of a place and for you to want to stay and live and work and grow here. So we're excited today. We have two amazing speakers. I will preface with a little housekeeping. This is going to be an engaging conversation. You will have responsibilities as a part of this conversation. And so for those that didn't hear my plug earlier, I'd strongly encourage you moving up closer, and I respect boundaries. So if you do not want to do that, that's fine. But they will be asking some conversational questions and sharing some data on the slide. So I want to make sure you can see everything because it's really important. So with that, I am going to introduce our two speakers, and I am going to read because these are pretty impressive resumes and I don't want to mess anything up. So directly to my right is Julie Heath. She's VP of Entrepreneurial Ecosystems at the IEDC, which is the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. It was a position that was created by the Secretary of Commerce as part of the Indiana's new entrepreneurship priority. Prior to IEDC, Heath led one of Indiana's oldest co-working spaces for entrepreneurs, the Speakeasy. Through entrepreneurial ecosystem building efforts as employee number one at a SaaS startup and through work in both the private and public sectors, Heath has found purpose in creating the conditions for people who want to start something, to explore hunches, to innovate, and to launch new businesses that thrive. Let's welcome Julie to the region. Courtney Zaugg is to my secondary right. Did I pronounce the last name correctly? Okay, great. She is the founder and president of Plaka Associates, a woman-owned innovation and impact consulting firm supporting industry, entrepreneurs, developers, investors, and economic development leaders in entrepreneurship-led economic development. Based in Indy and known for expert leadership in difficult projects, Plaka assists clients across the U.S. with diverse populations and regions faced with opportunities and challenges related to igniting entrepreneurship and encouraging growth. Courtney is a certified economic developer and an entrepreneurship development professional by the International Economic Development Council. Holy moly. Please welcome Courtney.
Thank you.
And I'll let you two take it away.
So first things first, how many are able to get onto this Slido session? Will you please raise your hands if you are successfully on? And we're gonna go ahead and start the audience engagement with this question. So the Slido code, you have to go to slido.com if you can't get that QR code and enter 600-687. And I encourage anyone who's on the online audience to join in. And then the first question is, what is your favorite entrepreneurship book or podcast? And I've set it up so you can add in multiple entries. And I think we should test this too. Yay, this is working. And if you've already done your entry, will you raise your hand? Okay. Is there anyone here who would like help getting onto Slido right now? Because I would like those who've already done their entry to offer to assist anyone else who would like to participate, because this is not the only one. We're going to use this for the whole talk. Do you need help with Slido? Yeah. Favorite entrepreneurship book or podcast? And if this is your first time using Slido, depending on your phone make, you might have to scroll down. Talking to Humans, is that a podcast or is that a book? Book?
Book.
This is great. How I built this is winning. It's a good podcast. So we're going to do some more crowdsourcing wisdom here. The question at the top is, are you an entrepreneur? Are you an aspiring entrepreneur? There's 4 answers. Yes, I am an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur. There's no, but I advise or work with an entrepreneur or with a startup. No, but I am interested in entrepreneurship. And yes, I hope to start a business. And you can actually answer multiple selections, I believe. We've got 38 participants right now. This is a good showing so far. I'm gonna offer again. Is there anyone else who would like help with Slido? Because there are multiple people here now who know how to use this, and I just want to make sure anyone who wants to participate can. So, as was mentioned in the introduction, we have a new Secretary of Commerce who has made entrepreneurship a priority. And the reason Secretary Chambers has made this a priority is because he has built a company from scratch. This comes from lived experience. So in December, he announced our priority areas for IEDC. And I personally like to anchor everything in real humans who are building companies. These are 3 examples of entrepreneurs I often talk about. But I would also like to know who you think of when you think of entrepreneurs. Who is an Indiana-based entrepreneur that you admire or that you're interested in, or maybe that you want to know more about? It's okay to mention yourself if you said, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Simba Chain, yeah, we heard a lot about Simba Chain this morning. We have 16 people who've entered, 17 entries. We're gonna back into a definition of entrepreneur here. I'm gonna expand it. I'm gonna say, please mention anyone who has a company the company's younger than 10 years of age, sector and scale doesn't matter, and or anyone who wants to start a company. So any company that's under 10 years of age and anyone who wants to start a company. If this is someone you admire, someone who's based in Indiana, go ahead and throw their name in there. So when I joined IEDC about 6 months ago, I have to admit, I didn't know much about state government, and I'm still learning. And I didn't know much about economic development. However, I was at the Kauffman Foundation Entrepreneurship Summit that Philip Gaskin mentioned in 2019, where we built out a playbook for ecosystem building, for entrepreneurial ecosystem building. And this framework that Del Gines of the Federal Reserve came up with and shared at that summit at Kauffman Foundation, I found really instrumental in understanding where does entrepreneurship fit into economic development. He calls it the 4 waves. The first one is what we think of with traditional economic development, recruiting companies from other places, industrial recruitment. The second wave is when SBDC was started in 1985. The third wave, if you can't see that, this says 1990s clusters. A lot of our cluster activity, our cluster research happened in the 1990s. And then 2010s, entrepreneurial ecosystems, or the conditions in which entrepreneurs thrive, and all the factors and actors that enable those conditions. That was catalyzed between 2009 and 2013, when some research came out, also funded by Kauffman Foundation, that showed something brand new about net new job creation. So when I say net new jobs, think gross jobs, and then you back out the jobs that disappear, either because the industry goes away or they go elsewhere. Net new jobs, the jobs that are here today and the jobs that are here for tomorrow. What we learned is that it's not small companies and it's not large companies that are informative for net job creation. It's the company age. It's the company age that shows us useful trends in net new job creation. And when Philip Gaskin referred to America's New Business Plan in his keynote, this is one of the charts. These are all net new jobs created in the United States between 2000 and 2018, split out by company age. So the blue line on top represents companies that are younger than 5 years of age. And the red line represents companies that are between 5 and 9 years of age. And the dark line is companies over 10 years of age. This is a mic drop moment for us. This is huge. So I started asking when I came on board, can we see this data for Indiana? Because this is great to have the national data, but what about what we can do at our state level? The answer, with some help from our friends at the Indiana Business Research Center, in particular Carol Rogers, is yes, we can figure this out for Indiana. Again, with that blue line on top being our youngest companies, it's very similar. It's not identical to the national data set, but it's very similar. So companies 0 to 5 years of age with the blue line on top, the red line or red-orange line, 6 to 10 years, and then the gray line on the bottom, companies over 11 years of age in terms of the net new jobs they created. Notice that even in the depths of the recession in 2009, when Hoosiers were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs, our youngest companies created over 9,000 net new jobs. And 2019, the most recent year that we have data, it was over 36,000 net new jobs, homegrown jobs. So this is beyond exciting because it shows that this is a place that we should lean in. We should pay attention and resource our youngest companies and the people who want to start them. So where do we go? I've been paying a lot of attention to the earliest stage of capital. What is the capital available for someone who has an idea and is trying to get to that first paying customer? And then what is the capital for the person who has their first paying customer and they're trying to get to their first 100,000 in revenue? We need to meet talent where they are in their learning journey, because the one known in entrepreneurship is you're going to have to figure out stuff that you don't know how to do. It's guaranteed, because when you're meeting an unmet need in a new way, there's going to be plenty of know-how to have to figure out. Local connectedness is the new term, and it's a new measurement. It came out of Startup Genome's ecosystem assessment that they did for us at the end of 2021 and into early 2022. We hired Startup Genome because of their global data set. And if our secretary says his ambition is for us to create the conditions to be a top state for entrepreneurship, we better benchmark against other global ecosystems and not just compare ourselves to Michigan and Ohio. And this is the beauty of this new local connectedness measurement. You can define the region, Startup Genome defined regions often as name a city and then draw a 62-mile radius around it. We split the state into 3 parts, the northern part, the central part, and the southern part of Indiana. But what they've done in their ecosystem assessments in over 45 countries, over 100 ecosystems around the globe, is they have figured out that local connectedness is really impactful, because if you hold capital constant and you hold talent constant, it's the ecosystems with the highest level of connectedness that accelerate all of their entrepreneurs twice as fast in revenue growth. For those of us who do community building and who know relationships matter, this is phenomenal. We finally have quantified what it means to have an impulse toward neighborliness, to be willing to give first, to be willing to help, to be willing to make that introduction. We finally have data to talk about it. These are the 3 regions we used in terms of the Startup Genome Assessment. And let's see, I just wanted to make sure that is the next slide. I have really good news for you guys. Northern Indiana is knocking it out of the park. You guys are globally competitive with the best regions around the globe. Taipei City and Tel Aviv are known for their local connectedness, and so is Northern Indiana. To show you guys that revenue impact, I asked Startup Genome for this slide. This shows the revenue growth of all startups in regions with high, middle, and low connectedness. I just want to go back to this for a minute. If you can't see the bottom of this graph, I apologize, the font is kind of small. On the left is founders helping founders, and on the right are investors and experts helping founders. The set of questions the Startup Genomes asked the 256 entrepreneurs from around Indiana were all related to, in the last 2 weeks, how many hours of help did you get from your peers? How many hours of help did you get from investors who weren't investing in you, but who were willing to help? And how many hours did you get from subject matter experts or content experts or community members who had an area of expertise or could make introductions for you? How quickly did you get unstuck? That's the question. How quickly can you get unstuck when you're an entrepreneur? And now we have this data to show it matters, because at the end of the day, it is about the revenue growth. So let's do a little baseline of connectedness in this room. Notice the people sitting around you, to your sides, in front of you, behind you. Make sure you get like at least 3, okay? All right. Now pay attention. For the person you know least well, what's the number you associate with the person you've never met? 0. I am aware of this person. I think I've seen this person before, or I know of them by reputation. 2 is we've emailed or we've met. And 3 is we have a close enough relationship that we already text each other. So enter a number for the person who you know the least. And then go ahead and enter a number for the person you know the best. Ooh, this is good. We have a bunch of never mets. Okay, now we're going to change the baseline. Turn to the person sitting near you that you know the least and share with them your favorite book or podcast about entrepreneurship. All right. So now we're gonna, this is always the hardest part.
Yes.
Okay, 10-second warning. And as you wrap it up, I want you to go back to this slide. Go back to Slido. And now we're gonna see these scores change. That 0 never met. Now you've met the person who you know the least. So go ahead and change your 0. And if you've already decided to meet up, then you better make it a 1 or a 2. So the point of this is that for those of you who've mentioned the Startup Community Way as your favorite book, you already know this about complex adaptive systems. The value is not in the factors and the actors. The value is in the relationships between the factors and actors. And the emergent value can't be predicted. All we can do is create the conditions so that you start to talk to each other and get to know what each person does. What is your piece of the puzzle in the ecosystem? And how do you dovetail with those around you? So this is a room full of very smart people. I would like to know, this is my wish list item, if we could do this and map it out like this, such as in a tool like Kumu, KUMU.io. It's one of my favorite systems mapping tools, but I'd really like to do a Slido type of experience and have the lines connect between all the people in the room. So that's my challenge to you. If you guys can, if someone here can figure that out, I am all ears. And then I should also mention that not only is this a priority that's brand new for Indiana, we've never had an entrepreneur for a Secretary of Commerce who has said this is really important to do, but this is a new profession. It's the first time, I call it the big IEDC, we're the small IEDC, we're Indiana Economic Development Corporation, that's International Economic Development Corporation. It's the first time we have a certification for professionals around entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial ecosystem building. And so that's why I invited both Courtney and Natalia to join us to talk a little bit about their experience. So I hope that we can just have a few minutes of conversation about what led you here, and you can share a little bit about your journey in this new professional space.
Thank you. I am, again, Courtney Zaugg. My company is called Plaka, and I am a certified entrepreneurship development professional. As Julie said, it's a new certification, and the journey getting here has been interesting. So when you grow up, no one says, I want to be an economic developer when I get older. Like, no one says that. No one even knows what people don't even know what it means. And so my journey, succinctly, is my background's in international development. My husband is a Marine Corps veteran, and both of us were trying to figure out, what do we do if we're not going down these paths that were originally our focus? And so spinning our wheels a little bit, my husband was doing remodeling projects on the side. And after I had gave birth to our daughter, she was 6 months old. It's like, yeah, let's start a business. Let's start a construction company. And just so you know, I don't recommend you doing that with an infant. And so walking through that process of starting this very small, this very non-innovative construction company, two things went off. One was, it shouldn't be this difficult. It doesn't have to be this difficult, and it shouldn't be this difficult, especially for veterans. And the other light bulb was, I was, at the time, I've been consulting for a long time, and I was working in communities across the country, mainly, tier 2 in rural communities. And folks always said, well, we do focus on entrepreneurship. And in reality, the way that the structural system is set up for economic development, it doesn't incentivize that. And so I said, one of these days I'm going to start my own thing, and I'm going to focus on helping communities lay the infrastructure to invest in entrepreneurship. And so a couple years after, once the construction company stabilized and our daughter was older, I started Plaka. At the same time, communities were asking for more support in entrepreneurship, and the International Economic Development Council, working in partnership with Kauffman, the Edward Lowe Foundation, Del Gines, developed this certification. And so I'm thankful to be part of the first cohort that received the certification.
How many of you are there? There's not very many of you who have this certification.
I should know that I think it's 6.
Okay. We have 2 in Indiana.
We have 2 in Indiana. And actually Natalia and I were former coworkers. So I'm feeling really good company. She's fantastic. She works for LISC.
So in the veteran space, can you tell us a little bit more about Bunker Labs?
Yes. So again, with my husband starting the business, I was also trying to figure out, how do we support these folks that have given so much? And I had been following Bunker Labs, which is, if you're not familiar, Bunker Labs is it's a national program supporting veteran and military connected, military spouse entrepreneurs. And I was lucky enough to be a part of the launch of an Indiana chapter just about a year ago. And they have a couple different initiatives to help entrepreneurs scale their business. One is called Veterans in Residence, and it is a peer-led cohort for 6 months. It's industry agnostic, and also, having the military background, they want to keep serving and giving back. And so there's actually quite a few nonprofits that are a part of that program as well. And one of the structure that we have in the Veterans in Residence Accelerator program, when they meet weekly, is this 90-minute huddle format. And essentially, it's a small picture, but essentially you work through, and it's time, so you have, a timekeeper, you have a facilitator, you have a note taker, and you're working through the sticky problems as a peer group. The other beautiful thing about Bunker Labs, and frankly about peer-led cohorts, is that once someone is vulnerable, the entire group opens up. And the veteran community, and what's great about Bunker is, that shared experience of whether you've been a spouse or you've been a child of someone that's been on active duty, there's this level of trust, this automatic foundation of vulnerability and relationship that many communities spend a lot of time and a lot of money trying to build, and it's already there. But going back to the huddle format, the first part is, what are your wins for the week? I think as entrepreneurs, we don't celebrate the small wins. Everyone gets stuck on the problems. And so we start automatically with, what are your wins? What's been great personally? Because honestly, if personally things are not working well, then realistically things in your business are probably not working well as in addition. And then we get to a section towards the bottom where we talk about critical questions. And it seems, if you read it on paper, it's like, this is kind of dumb, but it's not. It's powerful, and I've experienced it. And every time we go through it with the cohorts, it's actually magical. So the question would be, for example, how do I better promote myself as a real estate expert? And the rest of the peers in the cohort will take a minute, and then I step back. In fact, we actually have people turn around and they start providing solutions. Has Courtney thought about writing a white paper? Has Courtney thought about hosting a developer roundtable to show her expertise? It really sounds basic, but the solutions that have come out of that and how that's been implemented has been wildly successful. So the huddle format has been really great, and it's peers. It's not, you don't have a 10-time serial entrepreneur coming and saying, you should do this. It's all with one another. It's the local connectedness. It's also, I think, showing that we've all go through these same problems, talking about money, talking about workers. It might be different industries, but we get stuck on the same problems. So the huddle format I recommend. The other thing I'll mention, just a shout out to 3 Day Startup. They do the same. They do something similar, but they're focused more on young professionals. But you also have a lot of experience with peer-led cohorts, with working at the Speakeasy. Speakeasy is definitely a center of gravity in central Indiana.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for the technical problems on pulling this up. I'm not sure why I can't project without it going back to the questionnaire, but the founder peer groups that we ran were similarly helpful, and we stumbled upon them during COVID when everyone was feeling extremely lonely and isolated. And it also was a nice constraint that at that point, we didn't have any money to invest in our entrepreneurs, so we had to use that as a constraint. So what we would do is we would have this founders peer group, and let's say we had a dozen in the group. One thing to note is we didn't do a 6-week experience, we did a 9-month experience, which gave us enough time for people to hit those major potholes, to quit, to decide to unquit, and then to move forward with whatever they were trying to get off the ground. Most of our entrepreneurs were somewhere between idea and that first paying customer, but we had some who were between that first paying customer and we had someone getting closer to 100,000 in revenue. The most impactful tool that came out of it was what we call the $700 question. And so what we would say is we'd say, imagine I'm dropping $700 into your bank account right now. You have to spend it by tomorrow to move your business idea forward or your business forward. And then we'd go around the circle and we'd say, how would you spend it? Because you can even get the most expensive attorney in Indianapolis for an hour for $700, or you can hire someone to help you figure out that QuickBooks invoice that you're having problems with. Or you can hire someone, a developer, to look at that folder structure. We had one founder who said, I'm moving from working with this developer to this developer. This developer is telling me the code base for my website is in there, and so is my web app, but I can't find it because I'm a non-technical founder. So 70% of the time, the peers solved each other's problems. And then for the 30% of the time we couldn't solve it within our group, we went out to the bigger speakeasy community, which always hovered around 200 people in membership. And the nice thing about a nonprofit co-working space is half of your members are remote workers. That's a phenomenal brain trust. They come from every subject matter expertise, every industry. And so the brain trust allowed us to skip the missing money and go straight to what the money would buy. And what's great about that, just like with the huddle, I think, is that when you're exchanging help, we called it know-how via know-who, because we'd find that someone here knows who is that someone. When you exchange that help without dollars, if you have a surplus, it's goodwill. You just grow your sense of goodwill and gratitude to the group. And so you're willing to put more in introductions.
You know, one thing that I'll go back to that you told me when you were working to Speakeasy is the definition of success is how fast you can get to a yes or no for getting unstuck. Yeah. And I think that is the magic sauce, but it has to do with the local connectedness of, you know, how quickly are people willing to step in and help. And you know, some communities, you guys are doing it right and you're being successful, and some communities just need a little bit of help with that.
Yeah. And it's hard to walk up and introduce yourself to someone you don't know. It's probably one of those human, you know, those very, it's friction. There's friction in walking up and introducing yourself. But it's not so hard to say to two people, have you met? You don't even have to remember their names. It's the best trick in the book. Have you two met? Because if I've met both of you, it's easy. And I mean, it's easy enough. I haven't met either of you. And I can ask, have you two met? It's just a really easy back of pocket trick, especially if you are convening a community. So I am wondering, what's next for ELED? This brand new professional space. Where do you see us going?
I think it's going to be. I think it's turning, especially for some of the hardest hit communities regarding the pandemic, and smaller rural communities. It's going to be their primary focus. So, you know, often when you talk about economic development, you have they say it's a three-legged stool. You have business attraction, business retention, and entrepreneurship. And in reality, you know, the attraction efforts by both percentage, the data shows, like by percentage and by number, most of the large relocation projects, the attraction projects are in the metro areas, the large metro areas. And then I think communities are now, as they focus on building their community assets and quality of place, they know in order to be sustainable and thrive, they've got to invest in their people. And there's communities here around Indiana, rural communities that are saying, okay, I'm not gonna, I can't compete with the New York City relocation projects, so I'm gonna focus my time. And I want to be clear too, attraction is still very important. Okay, so this is more about a balance of time and resources, focused on building a pipeline of entrepreneurs, helping your existing, the entrepreneurial stack in your community, and then how do you catapult that in the future? So more and more people are paying attention, and I think the fact that IEDC has a certification, the fact that IEDC hired you and created this position to focus on ecosystem building, I think that's evidence of that.
Yeah. Well, and just so you all know, these slides, we'll see if I can successfully go back to a few of them. These slides, I presented this one that shows the impact, quantified impact of supporting local connectedness and enabling local connectedness, along with the prior slides. I presented these at the Q1 IEDC board meeting. The IEDC board is chaired by our governor. So our governor is well aware of these priorities and this data behind supporting entrepreneurs in your community. So please use that as you go about your work supporting this ecosystem. Please know that this is a statewide priority, and I personally am very interested in metrics and in storytelling and in connectedness and in the earliest stage of capital. And I will ask you to tell me what's working in your backyard. What do you see as potential solutions in your backyard? And the reason I start with metrics and storytelling is because I wish I could remember where I heard this so I could credit this person, but data without stories makes the data hard to believe, and stories without data make the stories hard to believe. And so we need both in the course of doing this work. I'd love to open this up to the audience for questions and further conversation. I'm not sure if I can get to the slide where we actually field the questions through Slido. So I don't know if we just do this the old-fashioned way with raised hands. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Vita Harley. My organization is Women Entrepreneurs Matter. We matter because we make it happen every single day. I am ready. We are ready. I formed that organization from the summit that we did in 2019 because we found here in St. Joseph County, it was only 2% of women entrepreneurs. So we wanted to create a movement. So this would be our 5th year doing the Women Entrepreneurs Summit, and women entrepreneurs around here are flourishing. But I just talked to him in that last meeting about the startups, and it's a couple of billboards over on the west end of town. It talks about the women have businesses, but it's really not a business, it's just a hobby. So I think that really need to be addressed because it's not easy. As she said, if your personal life is a little challenging and if you're a little low income, that makes it hard too, but that should make a difference whether you're an entrepreneur or not. And that's why I'm here today to, get some more information to share, because my organization, a spinoff of that is the Women Entrepreneurs Matter, so that I can, maybe take that local to global, so that people can know we do a lot of the grunt of the work.
Can I add to that in response? So I think, and Julie, I'm sure you'll be able to share about the storytelling. I think the definition of entrepreneur is very important, and it means different things to different people. You can have a couple different side hustles and you're an entrepreneur, and I think just because the way maybe culturally we haven't made that definition, we need to step into it. And I think a lot of, moms have been like that, stay-at-home moms, where they're doing these side gigs to help, make ends meet while still caring for their children. You're an entrepreneur. You're not building, you're not Elon Musk, but you're an entrepreneur, and what you're providing back to society is really important.
Yeah, and thank you for doing the work you're doing. Other questions? Yeah, I'm trying to come up with a visual, and the best I have so far, this is V1, is a marketing funnel. Think of just a traditional marketing funnel, because there's some point where someone hires a full-time employee. It's either a point in revenue where you have so much work coming in that you have to hire that full-time person, and maybe the 1099 part-time help isn't cutting it. And or you get through a successful fundraise, and now you have a bunch of money in the bank, and now you have to start delivering on that growth you promised. So you're hitting that, hiring that first employee, and then you're hitting our chart. But to get to that point, how much revenue do you have? Maybe 200,000? I don't know, plus or minus. Before that, you were at 100,000 in revenue. And before that, you were at your first 25,000 in revenue. And before that, you had your first paying customer. And then before that, you were developing the product service experience you're putting into the world. So understanding that there's more people who have ideas than who actually get to building the product or service experience, who get to the first paying customer, who get to the 100,000, who get to $1 million in revenue. Understanding that that's a funnel, and if we do a better job of removing barriers at the top of the funnel, the more deal flow everyone's going to have who plays lower on in the funnel. So that's V1 of the visual. And so if anyone would like to help me figure out what that looks like, because it has to be easy to get your head around the minute you look at it. Got a couple here. Oh, come back.
I'm Andrew Cox, and I am with a nonprofit called Conscious Michiana. We just started this in 2019, and it is supporting a lot of the local businesses as far as women that are involved in the spiritual community. My question is, what are some of the local resources we can access, especially when you're looking at building businesses to scale as well as dealing with market saturation?
Local resources. I think people in this audience will be best able to answer that. I'm going to look around, and Iris, you'll have ideas, right? Say.
Yeah, it's hard to find local groups in the area. Like, it's nice having the talks, but it's hard to find local groups you can connect with so that you can scale businesses to a larger level than just at the local level. That way the businesses are sustainable over the long term versus short-term income revenue.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, our region in particular has an abundance of programs startups like Elkhart, great games and reality, kind of help with this kind of all of them have to be involved in conversation wise and so lots, I think there's a lot of connectivity. It's really, it's not a program, it's finding a super connector that
I would also just plug Idea Center. So community entrepreneurs are welcome at the Idea Center, and they will help commercialize, scale, all of those things. So that is a great resource in our region, as well as some of the other higher education institutes have great programming around entrepreneurship.
And I'll also throw in the Small Business Development Center is, there are boots on the ground all over the state. So I'd recommend them as well.
You can also connect with me. I work with hundreds of women entrepreneurs in this area, and I'm into. But he had talked about the different tiers. That first speaker that came that talked about the 100K incubators, She mentioned the three tiers that they work, which was 3,000 and under, 3,000 to 3,000 to 9,000, and then 9,000, 100,000 and up. So you may want to contact them because they have an app that's dealing with that, and it's in our in events.
Beautiful.
The first day.
Yeah, she's here.
So I'm going to take a different tact just for variety. And so I was involved in a startup in 1978 and in Lawrence, Mass, an old mill city with 10% unemployment for 20 years since the end of the Second World War. And so we thought the solution was labor management. So we started a labor management group. And we found out it was the wrong model because half of the companies had no unions and didn't want to be in the same room with somebody who had a union. And then we discovered through an NBC white paper a guy named W. Edwards Deming who'd done some work in Japan. And so we got into that. And so the point I want to make is it's interesting to have these arbitrary numbers in terms of the first employee and the first 100,000 and so on. But I think another really critical part is finding the right problem, finding the right business that's interesting. And we grew. I left the company in 2015. And we published 52 books and made zillions of dollars just starting as a nonprofit trying to help the mayor. So I don't know if any of that's helpful, but I think it's good to see different models because we come up with these arbitrary things about, well, how long did it take to hire your first employee, or when did you get your first $1,000 or 100,000? So
I'll just say there are great question, great comment, because we have had a lot of conversations in the veteran and military spouse community about, okay, great, this is an accelerator to help you scale your business. Is your idea valid? Like, is it a good idea? And it's like, oh yeah, we should think about that. And so there are programs now that are pressure testing your idea. Is it a good one? Are you solving the right problem? Is it viable? And so you're right, starting from that square versus, okay, you've incorporated, you have a couple paying customers, how do you scale? It's like, okay, we need to step back for a moment. So I appreciate that.
Courtney, you've being a military prior active duty and military spouse, and now being a mother of two military, we're an Air Force family.
Wow.
So
Bravo.
anyhow, I would love the question if we can have the space. I'm just really curious, with you being up front, who in the room has been active duty in the military? Thank you for your service immensely.
Thank you.
And can I ask how many spouses might be, either or dependent children? Right. Or parents. There you go. How about parents?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I was just curious thank you and if you have anything to add, please do. I was just kind of curious in this local connectedness where I sat.
Those are good questions. I'd love to chat with you after about Bunker Labs too.